bad boy. Hey friends, you're back at Ground Zero Salem with Pat. So, as it happens, I have to go back to work on Monday. I've had a month off for some minor laparoscopic surgery for a hernia. Got to kind of hang out, make a bunch of videos, kind of listen to music and chill, but it's back to adulthood as of Monday. So probably the updates are going to trickle down a little bit, probably once a week, but it's been fun doing this. Got caught up with all my recent purchases, got to make a 2019 video that I was apprehensive about at first, but it came out pretty fun, talking about all the great releases that I enjoyed this year. And I'm gonna finish off my vacation with a topic video. Maybe you'll feel inclined to respond, maybe not. I was kind of inspired by Matthew Jones, aka The Dark Path. Sub him if you haven't. He did a couple of really, like, what you would think to be kind of no-brainer topics that I don't think were explored in the YouTube world so much, at least with people who talk about metal records, which was two topics. He talked about favorite EPs and favorite live records. And I was thinking, like, what would be another good, just fun, easy topic like that, talk about a specific type of release, and I thought of compilations. So we'll do a video on compilations right now. I think it's an interesting topic because there's a lot of discussion lately about how comps are kind of going the way of the dodo, so to speak. I think it was Reaper Metal had or Hellcast had a discussion about that too. Has streaming and playlists on Spotify replaced comps and stuff like that. It is true that, like, back in the Paleolithic era, when I was getting into death metal and hardcore and stuff, the best way to hear a bunch of bands cheaply was a comp record, and a lot of that is replaced by just being able to push an app on your phone or with a keystroke or what have you, check out anything you want. However, I think comps kind of served another purpose, which was to give a snapshot of a time and place with a specific genre, or to document a scene, or to obviously showcase a label. And I feel like some of the comps kind of got, the whole idea of compilations rather, got kind of saturated in the late 90s into the 2000s with a lot of pay to be on this, like, metal magazine comps that were sometimes not that great. But there are some classics that turned me onto a lot of great stuff, and a lot of stuff that I still spin regularly. So we're going to talk about it in just a second. Before I get into that, let me mention what we're listening to. Vulture, Drowned in Gangrenous Blood. I got this along with that new Ectoplasma. They share some members with Ectoplasma, it looks like. This came out on Spawn of Flesh. Just real grimy, gross death metal stuff. Kind of a little bit more like slashery and violent kind of sounding than Ectoplasma, but the same kind of great horror sort of vibes going on. A little bit more guttural. Also from Greece, obviously. My spooky part there. Alright, so let's get into these comps. Let's talk about these comps. I got a lot of them. Got a lot of them to get through. But you all know how fast I talk sometimes, so probably get through them relatively quickly. Put this one at the top because it's kind of an odd man out in my collection. This is Blood on the Cats. It's a psychobilly compilation. Psychobilly is one of those genres where I had a fleeting love affair with it maybe about 10 years ago, and there's still a few bands that I really like. Mostly the heavy hitters. I like the Meteors, who are on here, a couple of tracks. Demented Argo, who are not on here, unfortunately. The Stingrays are a band that's on here that are a little bit more like kind of garagey and not as, like, obviously horror inspired. Alien Sex Fiend is the first track on here, which is interesting. Come to think of it, they do have some kind of rockabilly-ish songs, but they're also way more considered like a early death rock or industrial kind of band. But yeah, this came out on Anagram back in '83, and it's a good overview of an interesting niche genre. Good for a guy like me that's just kind of, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but I do enjoy it from time to time. Metal Massacre 5. Get into some metal compilations. The Metal Massacres were crucial in the 80s. Obviously, it got Metallica signed, brought attention to them with the Hit the Lights song on the first one. All the Metal Massacre comps usually have bands that went on to be something a lot bigger, and some bands that you're like, who? Like Lethal Sin with a Y? I don't know who they are. But this has some bangers on it. Omen, Voivod, Attacker. really early Overkill song. Mace from Seattle, cool crossover band. Early vinyl appearance of Hellhammer. And most of these, like I said, they're exclusive to the comp. A lot of them are demo tracks and stuff. Jesters of Destiny, that's an underrated song on this. End of Time came out on Metal Blade in '84. Metal Massacre 5. Then I got a couple of Death Records comps. Death, Complete Death 2. Death being the kind of more punk, hardcore subsidiary of Metal Blade. This has a lot of established bands on it. It's got 2 songs from Crossover by D.R.I. before that record came out. They were exclusive to this. Beyond Possession from Canada, who are fucking great. The Mentors, Dr. No. The Ugly Americans, which had a future Corrosion of Conformity singer. Corrosion of Conformity is on here as well. Lost for Words. Depression from Australia, great ripping hardcore from Australia is on here. So there are a few bands that I don't think did anything else on Death Records, but a lot of it was mostly heavy hitters. Unlike that, we have this record, the second one, which is a lot of demo stuff, a lot of bands that didn't do much else. Bands like Hatred from New Jersey, who started out as a very early death metal band and turned into kind of a softer crossover thrash band. Lethal Aggression from Jersey was one of the bigger names on this. Definitely like blistering crossover stuff with kind of an East Coast New York sort of vibe. School of Violence, another New York crossover band. They were also bigger, but then you had Four Walls Falling, which is an interesting one. They were like a straight edge band from Virginia that I used to see all the time. I know they didn't come out with anything on this label after this. This is probably a demo song from their very early days. Alchemicon. Interesting mix of some semi-established bands that had releases on this label and just demo-only stuff. Kind of giving you a cross-section of like a lot of punk metal crossover stuff at the time. Then, I have to mention this again, I talked about this a while back, but mostly it's the cover that really pulled me in with this. I got this in Rochester, New York, sometime in the late 90s, I think 97 or 98. It's simply called Speed Metal. It's got this funny, cartoonish font, all these evil-looking creatures that really have somewhere to go. Apparently, they're all running this way, and just this eel, this little eel. It's like, hey guys, wait up! I'm cool too, right? But anyway, this is all staple stuff, all necessary speed and thrash metal. Back when I don't think there was much of a differentiation between what speed and thrash metal were. Speed metal is the term used to describe a new form of heavy metal that has changed the course of this music. Herein lie the masters of the genre. So strap yourself down and listen to some classic speed. You got Slayer, Evil Has No Boundaries, kicking things off. Hallows Eve, Hyrax, Voivod, Omen. Side 2, Celtic Frost, Visual Aggression. Destruction, Sodom, Bloodlust, who is the only band I can't remember what they were all about on here, and then Cryptic Slaughter, Lowlife. And at the time, you know, this is a few years before I discovered downloading. I think it was in its infancy in 97 or 98 whenever I got this. I'd wanted to hear Cryptic Slaughter for so long, and I couldn't find any of their stuff anywhere because it was out of print, you know, and I happened across this luckily used in a bin at the Record Archive in Rochester, and for the longest time, that was the only Cryptic Slaughter song that I heard. And I mean, it's the best, probably. Lowlife's a ripper, but it took forever until like I discovered eBay maybe 3 or 4 years later to track down all the LPs. Then you've got these Speed Kills comps, and these are British. You can tell by the blurbs on the back and the style of writing, it's very Kerrang. They came out on Under One Flag. Again, just intended to be a scene report, like snapshot of everything going on in thrash metal at the time. I don't want to read through all of these, but you've got Nuclear Assault on here, Holy Terror, Sacrilege, Dark Angel, Razor, Bathory, Death. So you've got the beginning of more extreme metal on here. Onslaught, big name UK band there. Whiplash. And some of the descriptions are really, really fucking funny. Death Angel, Mistress of Pain, Rush on Speed, count those riffs. Possessed, the original Toy Boy thrash band. Like, there's some shit talking on here too, like Nuclear Assault shits all over Anthrax or something. It's very, very Kerrang style writing, but I particularly like this one. You know, the crossover was in swing here. There's people stage diving, great crowd shots all over it. Switching gears towards a little bit more extreme stuff. You've got this Projections of a Stained Mind LP, CBR Records. Not sure what year off the top of my head, but it had to be 90 or 91, I think. This is one that I shelled out a little bit for because it's such a classic. You've got, I believe the CD version has both Mayhem tracks with Dead. This just has Carnage on it, but from an era before death and black metal kind of split. There's some really great stuff on here. Unleashed, Dismember, and Entombed are all represented. Chronic Decay, which is a little bit of a deeper cut, but really good kind of thrashy death metal stuff. Nirvana 2002. Cool printed inner sleeve there. Therion's on here. Grotesque is on here. Just a great who's who of Scandinavian, mostly death metal, but some stuff that was kind of black as well, especially Mayhem. And then, very crucial to my formative years, discovering extreme metal, death metal, and the like, we've got the Grind Crusher comp on Earache. I've talked about this numerous times. I had the tape version of this, which was like sort of a sequel and sort of an expanded edition, kinda, because it had a lot of the same songs. This only has 10 songs on it, and the CD and tape, the Ultimate Earache or whatever it's called, has like 30, I feel like, and has a bunch more stuff like Lawnmower Death and Naked City and some really weird stuff. But this has Morbid Angel, Repulsion, and Carcass on the first side, and Godflesh. Napalm Death, Terrorizer, Bolt Thrower, Intense Degree, and the Filthy Christians on the flip. All super crucial to kind of creating that sound that Earache paved the way for in the early 90s. Bolt Thrower on here has Through the Eye of Terror. On the other version of the Grind Crusher comp, it's World Eater, which is my favorite track by them ever. Then we've got this Giants of Steel comp on Roadrunner. This is a funny one. I mostly pulled this out of the stacks because of, you got lips from Anvil on the cover here, and clearly somebody thought it'd be funny to draw a dick in his mouth. Grow up! Grow up, people! Although he did play guitar with a dildo, so it's not that out of left field, I guess, for someone to do that. But anyway, it's Motorhead, Raven, Merciful Fate, Judas Priest, Anvil, Accept, Metallica, Venom, Black Sabbath, and Dio. Black Sabbath does Digital Bitch on here, so we've got the Ian Gillan era Sabbath, which is a cool choice. This must have come out not that long after that record, Born Again, 1984. So yeah, Motorhead, I Got Mine, another cool choice for a Motorhead song. From the Robbo era, the short-lived Robbo era on there. You got Metallica with Hit the Lights, can't go wrong with that. Venom, Poison. This is just a cool collection. I mean, every song on here rips. You can just throw this on in the background and, you know, kick your day's ass. We got Punk and Disorderly next. There are a bunch of these. This is the first one. All UK 82 stuff. Lots and lots of like Riot City bands and all that kind of shit. Vice Squad, The Addicts, Disorder. One Dead Kennedy song, because they seem to be friendly with the UK scene before any other American bands, and they did their first LP came out on Cherry Red. But yeah, just all anthemic, you know, pogo punk, street punk kind of stuff from the era when it mattered the most. GBH, Race Against Time. Great compilation. This came out on Posh Boy. I Thrash, Therefore I Am. This originally was a cassette that was pressed to LP by Schizophrenic Records from Canada. This is all Scandinavian hardcore bands from the early 80s. Mob 47, Anti-C-Max, two of the most well-known names for that style, but you also have Product Asar, Existens from Sweden, that band who I won't try to pronounce, Enola Gay from Denmark. Just a lot of like noisy, kind of frenetic, Discharge-inspired kind of hardcore stuff from Scandinavia. That scene was known for that. This one I could speak at length about for like a half an hour. I'm gonna try not to. This is the Peace Comp. Came out on R Radical Records in '84. It was Dave Dichter from MDC's label. All nuclear, anti-nuclear war themed hardcore stuff. Hardcore songs from all over the world. That's the track listing there. Yeah, I mean, it kicks off with Articles of Faith from Chicago, Up Against the Wall, which is a great song, followed directly by Gizm, Endless Blockades for the Pussyfooter, which is also a great song. I mean, there's so much. The Execute from Japan's on here, Septic Death, but you also have like an early Butthole Surfers song and Cause for Alarm from New York City. Lots of good Italian bands are represented on here. Wretched's on here, Negazione, Dead Kennedys, Crass, Subhumans, you know, a lot of big names, but a lot of really obscure stuff too. It's such a cool overview of what was going on with hardcore in 1984. Awesome stuff. Originally it came with like some big zine with all the bands in it. My copy did not have that, unfortunately. And this one is an interesting one, the Wound Deepens. What is it? Empty Skulls Volume 2, which came out on Fart Blossom Records, Fart Blossom Enterprises even. Another like cool mix of like different bands from all over. You had Pillsbury Hardcore, which had Eric Wood from Man is a Bastard in the band, Half-Life from Pittsburgh, COC's on this, early Corrosion Conformity stuff, Justice League, whose members went on to be in Chain of Strength. Then you have Pandemonium from Holland, Crude SS from Sweden, like early DB kind of crust stuff. Cholera, Brazilian band, is on here. It's just a really cool mix of stuff. I just picked this up a few years ago when I was hanging out with Jason Hook down in his neck of the woods in the South Shore, and I think I did a pickups video with him and talked about it then. But this is such an interesting, cool comp, and I'd never heard of Fart Blossom Enterprises. And after doing a little bit of a reading, like they were kind of an important label back then in Southern California, so very cool. Another like mandatory one, if you are curious about New York punk and hardcore, is this New York thrash compilation put out in '82 originally by Roar Records, which was the label that put out the Bad Brains self-titled The Yellow record. Originally came out on cassette because they were into cassettes, this label. Got repressed on vinyl a little while ago. 2002, okay, more than a little while ago. But this is just a great overview of like most of the New York bands and a few New Jersey ones. Like Adrenaline OD from Jersey's on this, for example. Bad Brains are on here. Beastie Boys when they were still a hardcore band. False Prophets. Bobby Steele from the Misfits band from after he left, called The Undead, who were awesome. Nihilistics, who are a great negative kind of hardcore punk band. Not just a clever name there. The Mad featuring Screamin' Mad George, who went on to be a special effects dude. Did a lot of crazy movies like Society, if you know your horror movies. Yeah, it was all pre-metal stuff before the kind of moshy shit kind of took over. A lot of it's very punk in spirit and punk in style. Relatively fast hardcore punk for the most part. Bad Brains were a huge influence on everybody. And then, you know, you have these New York hardcore comps. These are renowned for a reason. This is New York Hardcore the Way It Is. Came out on Rev. Put together by Ray of Today. Just a kind of a view of a scene, like comps used to be. Bold, Nausea, Warzone, Gorilla Biscuits, Trip 6, Breakdown. Won't spend too much time talking about this because it's such a staple thing, but you know, if you're looking to get into this kind of hardcore stuff, if you're curious about it, this is a good history lesson for you. Then, I like this comp a lot, but I actually prefer this one, which is Where the Wild Things Are. Came out around the same era, maybe a year or two later, but this had kind of the rougher, darker bands on it. Sheer Terror's on it, Outburst, Raw Deal, Life's Blood, Breakdowns on both. The odd man out on this I really like, which is Norman Bates and the Showerheads, who are more of like they're like scuzzy metal dudes playing like a Ramones Motorhead kind of hybrid, which is really cool. And also kind of odd on it is Gorilla Biscuits, who are probably the most bright and happy band on here for sure, doing a Buzzcocks cover, sitting round at home. But yeah, Uppercut, super underrated. Maximum Penalty, super underrated for this scene. So this kind of represented the underdogs a little bit more, I feel like, than The Way It Is, but there was so much going on in New York at the time that there was kind of enough for everybody. Then you had this comp, which was originally a cassette as well. This is the New Breed comp. All demo bands, some pretty big names for New York hardcore and some pretty obscure ones as well. Not all the tracks really crunch too hard, but a good half of the songs on here are great, especially the first song, Never Ending Game by Absolution. More Outburst on here, more Life's Blood, two great bands. Raw Deal is on here as well. Abomination, that's a low-rated band that were kind of melodic and good. Some bands I don't really think they did much else. Our Gang had a few things. Direct Approach I don't think had anything else. Fit of Anger. I believe True Colors was Daryl Kahan's first band from Funebrarum, Disma, Citizens Arrest, etc. If I'm not mistaken. So this is a cool overview. Some of it's just kind of like demo stuff. Some of it's really good demo stuff. This came out on War Dance and Lush Life. This New Breed comp. Then you had the Look at All the Children Now compilation. The last New York hardcore compilation I'm going to talk about. Have a lot of these. This came out on Evac Records. This kind of more represented like the ABC No Rio, which was like a DIY venue kind of scene with the bands that frequented there. It was a little bit more political, a little bit more DIY. But this had Bad Trip, SFA, who are one of my favorites, Moondog, the band that bridged the gap between Gorilla Biscuits and Quicksand. You had Go, Yuppicide, Citizens Arrest, Bug Out Society. The Bug Out Society song on here, no lie, is one of my favorite hardcore songs ever, and it's about a party line. You know, the 1-800 or 1-900 numbers that you would call and like being basically a group chat with people, which was a thing in the late 80s. Totally silly thing to have a song about, but man, that song rips. So funny. Rorschach is on this, doing their very early style before Charles Maggio had really shredded vocals. He sounds like almost like clean vocal kind of hardcore singer guy on this. Very cool. Going into the 90s, this came out I think in 90 or 91 is the Voice of the Voiceless Comp. This is kind of a who's who of like the new wave of animal rights and straight edge oriented bands. This was a big fundraiser for the ALF and a bunch of other organizations. You had Endpoint on here, great Louisville hardcore band. Transcend, Worlds Collide, fucking awesome metal riffs all over that song that almost sound like it's like a thrash metal riff but over like a hardcore beat basically, which would kind of help define that stuff, would help define what hardcore would become in the 90s. A bad Youth of Today live song that does not sound good. Split Lip, which was like early emo kind of stuff before emo kind of lost the distortion and the anger. Shelter's on here. Downcast, very heavy band, Downcast. Outspoken Daydream, great song. There's a animal rights hip-hop song on here called Cruelty Free by a guy named Rob R. Rock. I don't recommend that song. Not very good. But yeah, this came with a huge fold-out lyric sheet and everything. And yeah, I mean, this just brings back memories of the first couple years I was going to shows, because it was a lot of those bands would play. I'd seen like half the bands on that comp. And then this came out in 96. This is Nothing's Quiet on the Eastern Front. This is kind of a cool merging of underground hardcore and grind, power violence, all that sort of more extreme end of hardcore. The bands that were still playing fast in 1996. Black Army Jacket's on here. Brutal Truth is on here. Devoid of Faith, Disassociate, who are basically a straight up grind band almost. Drop Dead, still going, still killing it. Judas Iscariot, Monster X, and Suppression. Judas Iscariot, not the black metal band, hardcore band. Eucharist, not the metal band, hardcore band. But yeah, very cool compilation, very well put together. All the tracks are really strong. I do have the booklet for this one. There it is. These cool zombie soldiers. Then we got the Possessed Escape comp. This was a fun comp, came out on 625, sometime in the mid to late 90s. All bands singing about skateboarding, more the kind of the power violence sort of scene at the time, or fastcore, whatever you want to call it. Charles Bronson's on here. There's some pretty funny song titles all over this, but As Fucked as Gator is a good one. They cover a Faction song, You Will Go. Spaz is on here right after that, doing their style. Asshole Parade from Florida. Pretentious Assholes and Unanswered, I don't remember what they sound like off the top of my head. Despise You's on here, they're fucking great too. Great power violence band from Southern California. All songs about skating. As Fucked as Gator just cracks me up every single time I look at it. But you got that classic Charles Bronson tiny print insert there. Each band has their own little spread. Very fun. And then finally we got the end of the pile, the start of Riot Comp. This was a big introduction for me for a lot of the underground kind of spiky punk and crust that was going on. Defiance, Code 13, The Pissed, Aus Rotten, very important band back then. Capitalist Casualties, you know. And again, these were all exclusive tracks. So, you know, if you wanted these songs, you had to buy this comp. It's got the zine with it. All kinds of literature for you to pour through. This is the Aus Rotten page. People are not expendable. Government is. Submachine, great Pittsburgh band that everybody seems to forget about. Capitalist Casualties doing a D.R.I. cover on this. Dennis's Problem doing it well. Civil Disobedience, one of the most talented bands from the Minneapolis crust scene. They were just tight as a drum. Yeah, it's a good, like I said, it's a good snapshot. It's a good time capsule. Good overview of a time and place in hardcore and punk. All right, that's it. So that's it for a while. I don't know. Maybe I'll be back next Friday, hopefully. Have some more stuff to talk about. Mike from Ontario is still killing it with sending me awesome stuff, so I'm going to at least talk about those records he gave me. Possibly do another collaborative video with my lovely wife, Amanda, where we talk about our Christmas presents, so that should be fun. That's in the works. And that's it for now. If you just subbed recently, thanks. Appreciate you.